Wow, 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 wow. Supreme bribes and U.S. Supreme Court. Okay. How a secretive billionaire handed his fortune to the architect of the right-wing takeover of the courts. In the largest known political advocacy donation in U.S. history, industrial Barre Seid funded a new group run by Federalist Society co-chairman Leonard Leo, who guided Trump's Supreme Court picks and helped end federal abortion rights.
Yesterday, news broke which revealed the largest single political advocacy donation in U.S. history, $1.6 billion. And the money was gifted to Leonard Leo, the man arguably the most responsible for packing the Supreme Court with right-wing extremists and the overturn of Roe v. Wade. The donation came from an ultra-conservative billionaire from Chicago named Barre Seid. Through obscure financial maneuvers, Seid transferred ownership of his electronics company to a nonprofit organization run by Leo, who then sold the company. This handed Leo a $1.6 billion political war chest while allowing Seid to avoid almost $400 million in taxes. If you don't know Leonard Leo, he is one of the most influential people in all of U.S. politics. He's the co-chair of the Federalist Society, and he was Donald Trump's top judicial advisor, making him the person arguably the most responsible for the Supreme Court's 6-3 conservative majority and the overturning of Roe v. Wade. The fact that this man now has $1.6 billion of fresh cash on hand should be absolutely terrifying to anybody on the left or anybody who cares about money's influence on U.S. politics. You can read the entire story at The Lever. It was written by my colleague Andrew Perez, who was the one who originally uncovered Leo's fund, as well as Andy Kroll and Justin Elliott from ProPublica, who co-wrote the story.
They worked hard, and frankly, I want to start by thanking the Supreme Court for its unanimous decision today. It was a very important decision. We're very well crafted, and I want to start by thanking the Supreme Court for its unanimous decision today. It was a very important decision. We're very well crafted, and I think it will go a long way toward bringing our country together, which our country needs. And they worked long, they worked hard, and frankly, they worked very quickly on something that will be spoken about 100 years from now and 200 years from now. Extremely important.
The United States of America has a flawed system. No separation of powers when you have corrupt people making the laws. When your president is corrupt, you go to the Congress. If the Congress is corrupt, you go to the place of last resort, the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court is corrupt, then you have a country called the failed state. A failed state is a state that has lost its ability to fulfill fundamental security and development functions, lacking effective control over its territories and borders. A dysfunctional country.
Finally, we are going to address the biggest scandal in American democracy that we are currently having right now, which is the extraordinary corruption and wholesale purchase of members of the Supreme Court. I also find it amusing that we just heard from the Republican side, why do we want to talk about this? Because women have lost the right to choose, because indigenous people have lost rights, because minorities have lost rights, because working people across the country have lost rights due to this level of corruption. According to ProPublica's reporting, Justice Alito was flown on a private jet on this luxury trip, and if he had chartered a similar jet, it would have cost more than $100,000 each way. $100,000. Now, Professor Clark, with the cost of about $100,000 per flight, would Justice Scalia be required to disclose this trip?
I believe you're referring to Justice Alito.
Alito, yes.
And yes, under the Ethics in Government Act, disclosure would be required.
And did he?
My understanding is that he did not.
He did not. The billionaire who generously sponsored this trip, Paul Singer, did business before the court at least 10 times in cases where the legal press and mainstream media often covered his role. So it was publicly known that he had business before the court. And in 2014, in fact, Justice Samuel Alito, along with the court, agreed to resolve a vital issue in a decades-long battle between Singer's hedge fund and the nation of Argentina. Do you know if Alito recused himself from this case?
I believe he did not.
He did not recuse himself from this case, and in fact, he used his seat on the Supreme Court after all of this to rule in Singer's favor. And following the decision, Mr. Singer's hedge fund was ultimately paid $2.4 billion because of this ruling. Not a bad return on investment for a fishing trip there.
So the fucking Supreme Court has decided to take the Trump case. And you all thought that by sitting home and being a Bernie bro in 2016 was not going to affect the judges that are appointed to the Supreme Court, who overturned Dobbs, who is about to take away the abortion pill, who are probably going to outlaw contraception. They're working for Trump. This is what you get when you sit home and don't vote. And for all of these people who are voting uncommitted and third-party candidates, good luck to you. I'm going to remind you people that during the Great Depression, they passed laws that actually deported Mexican American born citizens out of this country. Wasn't the first time that they deported American citizens. So for all of you people in Michigan who are up in arms, this Supreme Court, if Trump gets back into power, will uphold every Muslim ban, deportation, and everything else that he wants to do. So sit home and don't vote.
Over the weekend, new revelations about more ethical issues with the Supreme Court. You heard about Gorsuch having his real estate bought 9 days after he was sworn into the court. Real estate that he couldn't move for 2 years. Just a coincidence, folks.
Didn't disclose who bought it either.
You know, it happens.
Yeah, paperwork issue.
Clarence Thomas, whose record of ethical violations goes back over 10 years when Breyer and Scalia testified in 2011 to the same issues that Thomas still has involving that guy, the billionaire Crow. You'll also remember Scalia. Where did he die? He was in like some billionaire's, retreat.
Hunting retreat, yeah.
We also have Sam Alito going out there whining and crying that nobody's respecting the court, claiming that he knows who the leaker is of the Dobbs ruling, which I bet he does, because he probably sees him every morning when he gets up and looks into the mirror.
I was about to say, was that his quote when looking at himself, pointing?
Let's remember that it is quite established that he leaked the ruling in the Hobby Lobby case. The person who received the leaks has told us so. And somehow the Supreme Court investigation went nowhere, but he knows.
Congress has a responsibility to protect American citizens from a corrupt and unethical Supreme Court. Congress has a responsibility to protect American citizens from a corrupt and unethical Supreme Court.
I've never seen this around any court that I've ever been involved with, where there's this much dark money and this much influence being used.
Well, it's in. The final decision, well, at least for now, of the United States Supreme Court on the issue of whether Donald Trump has presidential immunity so he can commit crimes while he's in office. Sounds like a terrible precedent to set. We actually thought on Legal AF there's no way the United States Supreme Court is going to find 4 votes, let alone 5 votes, to establish the precedent that anybody that sits in the Oval Office is completely immune with superpowers. He or she can commit any crime they want, and they can get away with it. That can't be the law in this country. Yet, the United States Supreme Court has decided that that's an interesting question. Really? Is it? And rather than just leave undisturbed the D.C. Court of Appeals decision, which found no presidential immunity, thank God, they've decided, we'd like to know more about that. Let's have full briefing on an appeal, and we'll get together April the 22nd, an oral argument, and talk about it. Maybe we'll issue a decision this term, sometime in June. Who knows if you can get to your trial or not? And the D.C. election interference case, who knows? Well, we know, and former prosecutor Karen Freeman McNifilo may break it down on the most recent edition of Legal AF. Here you go. Okay, we got some breaking news, much different than I had thought, and thank you for Salty for posting it there. The United States Supreme Court, apparently there's at least 5 votes of the United States Supreme Court to convert the request for a stay by Donald Trump on the 3-judge panel ruling for the D.C. Court of Appeals that there is no presidential immunity, absolute or otherwise, for criminal conduct while the person is in office. Supreme Court thinks that's interesting and has now decided to set it for a full appeal with full briefing and oral argument, timing out for April the 22nd. What is the impact of that? First of all, I'm gobsmacked for many reasons.
This is just the unethical and or illegal activities we have discovered about Clarence Thomas thus far. Do you know about all of these? The $150,000 for boarding school, the $130,000 for selling 3 homes, $600,000 in anonymous donation to his wife Ginny's organization, and then another $25,000 for Ginny, $500,000 in free luxury vacations, a $19,000 Bible, a $15,000 sculpture, many free rides on private jets, free renovations to his mother's house, and his mother is living there rent-free, countless financial filings, omissions. Ginny was trying to overthrow American democracy, and it all started with sexual harassment claims. The fact that this immoral, incompetent, inarticulate, inappropriate, unethical guy gets to sit on our highest court and render judgments that every other American has to live with is a fucking joke. And unless he resigns in disgrace or goes to jail, he will continue to undermine the credibility of not only the Supreme Court, but the entire American system of justice. Do you agree?
I'll take you to one very telling event. A meeting inside the U.S. Capitol with Republican Party operatives and a number of leading evangelical spokespersons, institutional leaders, ministry heads from across the country. And in that meeting that I participated in, the conversation went something like this. You guys want Roe v. Wade overturned. We can do that for you. But you take the whole enchilada. You take the whole thing. You take everything else that comes with it. Because if you want Roe gone, you have to work with us. So you take it all. I was at the table and I watched my colleagues nod uncomfortably, but from that point on, the community that I had served and still do made a deal with the devil. And that deal was that we would support everything on the conservative agenda, whether or not we had conscientious conflict with it. The means were justified by the end of that.
And it also meant that you had to approach the Supreme Court in a different way, that they had to be influenced?
Well, certainly we had to do everything we could to ensure that the justices would be resolved to begin laying the groundwork for the reversal of Roe.
What is this United States Supreme Court doing running interference for Donald Trump? Because Donald Trump's only goal right now.
The United States Supreme Court is a broken institution. It has lost the trust and faith of the American people. And the person who is most singularly responsible for that is Justice Clarence Thomas. He is corrupt. The collapse of integrity on the court is not the fault of John Roberts, but it is his responsibility to address it directly and to clean it up. And make no mistake about it, The American people have reached a conclusion. Their conclusion is the court is corrupt. It cannot be trusted. It has become extreme and unaccountable. This isn't what the design of the Founding Fathers was. There was an element of trust involved when it came to judicial ethics. Clarence Thomas has obliterated that trust. The court is not above ethics, and the court is no better than its lowest member.
Congress has a responsibility to protect American citizens from a corrupt and unethical Supreme Court.
I've been a criminal defense lawyer for almost 35 years, and I have some definite opinions about what is happening with the Clarence Thomas situation. Justice Thomas in the United States Supreme Court and his accepting of hundreds of thousands of dollars in free gifts, travel, consideration, and all kinds of favors he's getting from this real estate billionaire, trust baby guy who basically wants to influence his vote. And I'll tell you why it's clear that that's what's going on. First off, I think it's outrageous. I think it's outrageous that any judge in this country, any judge, but specifically federal judges, Article 3 judges, would do something like this. And there should be consequences. I don't know if there will be, but there should be. But let me just dig a little deeper into this thing. You know, it's one thing to be a senator, a congressman, somebody running for president, and ask for money, because unfortunately our political system runs 100% on money. And so you can give a politician money and they need that money to run. They're not taking that money to put it in their pocket most of the time and then say, I'll vote your way. Okay, that's not what they're doing for the most part. They need it to run. Now, does it help that you're a big contributor and you might get, the factory that was supposed to be built on your farmland, not built on your farmland? Maybe. And that's how it works, unfortunately.
First, there was Clarence Thomas refusing to recuse himself in cases related to the January 6th attack on the Capitol, even though his wife, Virginia Thomas, conspired with the Trump White House in text messages to overturn the presidential election. Then there was the Supreme Court's refusal to investigate public allegations that Justice Samuel Alito and his wife leaked a Supreme Court ruling to rich conservative donors during a dinner party at Alito's home in 2014. Chief Justice John Roberts did immediately order an investigation of the leak last year of Samuel Alito's draft opinion overturning Roe v. Wade, but the Chief Justice never ordered an investigation of Clarence Thomas's family bias in cases brought to the court, and the Chief Justice never ordered an investigation into the possibility that Samuel Alito and or his wife leaked a Supreme Court ruling before it was published in 2014. And now we know why the Chief Justice of the United States doesn't order investigations of possible misconduct and family-based biases that the justices might have. The New York Times is reporting that Chief Justice John Roberts' wife works as a recruiter for law firms, and that her work poses a strong possibility of conflict of interest for the Chief Justice. The Times reports that Kendall Price, who worked with Jane Roberts recruiting lawyers, quote, has provided records to the Justice Department and Congress indicating Mrs. Roberts has been paid millions of dollars in commissions for placing lawyers at firms, some of which have business before the Supreme Court. In a letter accompanying the material he submitted to the Justice Department and Congress, Kendall Price wrote, I do believe that litigants in U.S. courts, and especially the Supreme Court, deserve to know if their judges' households are receiving six-figure payments from the law firms.
The Washington Post reporting Ginny Thomas, wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, collected nearly $600,000 in anonymous donations for a conservative group called Crowdsourcers for Culture and Liberty. It's not the first time Ginny and Clarence Thomas have come under scrutiny for conflict of interest issues. In 2020, Ginny Thomas urged White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to pursue efforts to overturn Donald Trump's election loss and pressured officials in Arizona and Wisconsin to choose pro-Trump electors. Justice Thomas was the sole dissenter in the Supreme Court's 8-1 decision that led to the release of White House documents around January 6th.
What do I have to do to be heard now? What do I have to do to make you learn now? I could build these tables strong, but would they turn now? So I light them at the base, and I'm laughing all the way down. This is not an invitation. Fuck you mean you need it. Fuck you mean you are stupid. I don't need a reason. This is not an invitation. Fuck you mean you need it. Fuck you mean you need it.
Which revealed the largest single political advocacy donation in U.S. history, $1.6 billion. And the money was gifted to Leonard Leo, the man arguably the most responsible for packing the Supreme Court.
Hello friends, welcome to the end. Have you subscribed yet? Yes, press the subscribe button and the like button and also the share button. Thank you and have a nice day.